Hi, Lisa here from Cool Kids Hub. So today I wanted to talk about early morning wakings in babies. What are they and what are some of the tips to kind of help with the early morning waking? Now, as hard as this is for us to accept as parents, babies are actually early risers. Now, those first few months, you're so focused on getting your little one to sleep, you just want them to sleep for longer stretches or even to sleep through the night. And you're finally getting excited because they're sleeping longer when all of a sudden your little one has other plans and swaps their middle of the night wakings for early morning wakings. And let's face it, when you're tired, 5:30 in the morning can feel like the middle of the night. So why do babies wake so early? Well, like I said, as hard as it is for us to accept, babies are naturally early risers. Now, without getting too technical or scientific, we all have a sleep drive, and that sleep drive actually builds up during the day. So it's at its highest in the evening, but as we sleep, that sleep drive decreases, so it's at its lowest in the morning. So at night, we actually don't find it, even us as adults, difficult to go to sleep. It's dark, it's cooler, our sleep drive is at the highest, so we actually go to sleep fairly easily. But as the night wears on and our sleep drive decreases and it starts to get light outside in early morning and our sleep drive is at the lowest, even as adults, we can often wake up a few times in those early hours of the morning. But we've kind of learned to go back to sleep. Plus, we're probably tired and we really want it. So we go back to sleep. But babies haven't yet learned this skill, which is often why when they early wake in the morning, they won't actually go back to sleep. They'll just wake up. Now, you might be thinking, what constitutes an early waking? Now, up until 12 years of age, like I said, children generally will rise early. If they're rising anywhere between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m., this would really be constituted as an age-appropriate awaking time. So between 6 and 7, if they're, up until 12 years old, that is fairly age-appropriate. If they're waking between 5 and 6 a.m., this would constitute as an early morning waking. And anything before 5, so like 4:30 or whatever, that's not early morning, that's really still a night waking. So if you think about it, night waking, anything before 5, between 5 and 6 would constitute as an early morning waking, and a lot of parents have this issue where their baby will wake up somewhere around that 5:30 mark, but then from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock is really age appropriate if your child is under 12 years of age. So what are some of the tips that you can try in order to extend that awake time by a little bit? So first of all, tip number 1 is block out the light. If you suspect your baby's room is a little bit too light, you could try putting up some blackout curtains. Now, even the slightest little bit of light in the early hours of the morning can wake your baby, so it's a really good option. And there are some great portable blackout curtains that you can buy, and the great thing about those is then you can take them if you're traveling, or if your little one has to sleep over at someone else's house. I'll put some links in the description to this video for some great options for that. Tip number 2 is keep the bedtime early. Now, I know that you might think, if I let my little one go to bed later, they'll wake up later. But this is really true because, like I said, waking sort of from around 6 a.m. is in actual fact a natural awake window for a baby anyway. So keeping them up late, all you're going to do is end up with a cranky baby. If your baby is kind of over 3 months old, so newborns really between 9 and 10 p.m. it is an appropriate bedtime. But if they're older than 3 months old, you really want to have a bedtime between 7 and 7:30. So if your little one is currently going to bed later than that, then I suggest moving that bedtime forward a little bit each night every few nights by 15 minutes. So let's say right now your baby goes to sleep at 8:30, move it forward by 15 minutes, leave it for a few nights, move it again 15 minutes until you get closer to that 7:30. Generally then you find that your baby is not overtired, so they find it a little bit easier to go to sleep and stay asleep. Tip number 3 is don't make the first nap of the day too early. Now, you want to make sure that you obviously are sticking to your appropriate awake windows based on your baby's age. But try to, if you've got a little one that wakes up at 5, you might find by 6 they're tired and they want to go down for their nap. But you don't want that first nap to be too close to bedtime, because they kind of start to take it as an extension of night. So what you want to do is try and just push that first nap out a little bit, but still making sure that you stick to the awake windows. So, you might push it to, sort of 75 minutes. And yes, the first few days will be challenging, but then they'll start to, all the other naps will be pushed out a little bit. So yeah, don't make that first nap too close to the awake time. Tip number 4 is don't let them sleep too much in the day, because you don't want a baby that's not tired enough that they're going to sleep at night. So again, you want to make sure you're sticking to your awake windows, and you want to make sure that your baby's having the appropriate hours sleep. Now, I will put links down in the description to the awake windows by age, as well as the amount of hours sleep by age in the description of this video, that you can actually have a look at. But you want to make sure that the baby's getting enough sleep, so don't let them sleep too much, because then they're not going to be tired enough. Now, my next tip, you're going to say, what? Is don't make sure they have enough sleep. So I know it's confusing. Don't let them sleep too much. Make sure they've got enough sleep. But the reality is if your baby is either tired or they are not, so they're overtired or they're not tired enough, they will not sleep well, and this can impact early morning wakings. So here you really want to just be making sure that your baby's getting the right amount of sleep. So not too much sleep, but they're also not getting too little sleep, because you think, if I don't put them down for this nap, then they're going to be more tired and they'll sleep longer, because they won't. They'll just struggle to go to sleep because they will be overtired. So as confusing as that is, the thing is to just try and make sure they get the right amount of sleep, which I know is easier said than done, because naps don't always go to plan and the day doesn't always go to plan. So I understand that, but just try to make sure as close as possible they're getting the right amount of sleep each day. So tip number 6 is to make sure you fill up your little one. Now, I'm not saying that if your baby wakes early, it's just because they're hungry, but if you suspect that your little one is waking because they are actually hungry, then maybe just try and load up a little bit of the calories during the day, so that they can actually sleep longer through the night and not wake up so early. Tip number 7 is make your breakfast time a little bit later. So if your little one wakes up now at 5:30 and you feed them straight away, their bodies and their tummies get used to being fed at 5:30. So they wake up and they're straight away looking for food. So try and push them out a little bit. So if your little one wakes up at 5:30, don't feed them straight away when they wake. Maybe push them out, to get closer to 6 a.m. and feed them then. Now, that does mean they're going to start probably waking up at 6 for a feed, but remember, between 6 and 7 is an age-appropriate wake time. So you don't want them waking up at 5:30, but if they wake up at 6, you just have to accept that that is an appropriate awake time for a baby or young child. But at least this way their bodies get used to eating at 6 and not eating at 5:30. So move that breakfast a little bit later. So tip number 8 is if your baby teach your baby to fall asleep independently. So if you still have a baby that doesn't fall asleep independently, in other words, you still rock them, feed them, shush them, whatever you do to get them to sleep, it's also going to be really hard for them when they wake up in the morning to go back to sleep, even in those early hours, because they're going to be looking for you to rock them, shush them, feed them back to sleep. So if you haven't yet, if your little one is not yet falling asleep independently, you're thinking now might be the time to consider then sleep training. I will put the link to a sleep training program a review of a sleep training program I use to sleep train my little one. But this will definitely help them, because when they wake, then they can get back to sleep on their own a lot easier. So tip number 9 is don't go to them immediately. So if they wake, on that 5:30 mark, don't go to them straight away. Leave them a few minutes, because you might find they actually go back to sleep on their own. if you just give them a few minutes. I'm not saying leave them in their cot to cry and fuss. And some babies are actually quite happy to just lie there for a few minutes, just entertaining themselves. But just don't go to them straight away, and actually see if they will go back to sleep. And my final tip is, if you have a toddler, this is going to be obviously appropriate for toddlers, not for babies, but if you have a toddler that is waking up also around that 5:30 mark, is consider a toddler clock. Now these clocks are great because you can set them so the color of the clock actually changes at the time you want your little one to get up. So if you want your little one to only get up and call you and around 6 o'clock, you can actually set the clock so it changes color at that time, and you tell your little one, listen, when it's red, for example, you can't go up. When it's yellow, the sun's up, then you can get up, and at that time you set it for 6 or 6:30. Now, I personally didn't use these, but I know lots of friends who use them and still have them today for their kids, and they swear by them. It just helps to keep your little one in the bed a little bit longer, and you can maybe get an extra half an hour sleep. So those are really my sort of 10 tips for helping to extend that early or solve that early morning waking. But like I said, just know that between 6 and 7 is age appropriate, and eventually your child will be old enough they can get up and make their own breakfast, so you'll be able to sleep. But until that time, expecting your little one to sleep till 8 a.m. is probably unrealistic, although there are some fortunate parents that have babies that sleep that long. But for the majority, waking between 6 and 7 is actually very normal. I hope these tips help you with your early morning waking so you can get a little bit of extra sleep. Bye for now.